joined by former Olympic medalist Zeke Jones. He's currently the USA Men's Wrestling Freestyle Coach, and he's live with us in his home in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Thanks for joining us tonight, Zeke.
Yeah, sure. Anytime, guys.
We're also joined by our winners of the Hangout with Responsible Sports and Zeke Jones promotion. We'd love to learn who you are, where you're from, and how you're involved with wrestling. And we'll start with Chuck.
Hi, Zeke. I'm a kids coach in Maryland. I coach a little kids program outside of Washington, D.C. I have an 11-year-old who just started wrestling this year. It's great to be this close to you. I met you back in 92, 93 in Kyiv, Ukraine. You were wrestling at a tournament. I hung out with you and Tom Erickson. I think I was the lone American fan at that tournament, but it was cool watching you back then. And it's just really an honor to be on with you. And I had a couple questions with you. I guess I'll start at the junior level. I'm sure some of the other guys have more senior questions.
Chuck, what we'll do first, Chuck, is we'll go down the line and introduce everybody. Then everyone
cool.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
We'll get to know a little bit about Jeff.
Hey, Zeke. I'm Jeff. I grew up in Illinois, and I went to college in New York, wrestled there. Now I live in Ohio, and I coach a youth team. And I learned most about you in reading Bobby Douglas's biography.
Cool. Josh, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Josh. I'm from Indiana. I'm kind of new to wrestling. I wrestled a couple years in junior high, and I have a 4-year-old that just started wrestling this year.
Great. Mickey, you want to tell us a little about yourself as well?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. My name is Mickey Hannon. I'm from Illinois, live in North Carolina now, and
well, I think we may have lost Mickey there. All right, well, while Mickey reconnects, go ahead and hear from Paul.
Yeah, my name is Paul Garcia. I'm from Bakersfield, California, and saw you wrestle in the Pac-10s back in '88. Was just got out of high school, was going into college. Really inspiration. That's one of your guys' most successful years, correct?
Yeah, we had a pretty good run at that time.
Yeah. So appreciate you guys having me, and look forward to asking you some questions.
Thanks for joining us. Will, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
I live in Mason City, Iowa. I wrestle for Mason City High School. I'll be a senior next year. Qualified for the state tournament last year, so I'm looking to find some ways to get some advice on how to take that next step in high school. Not really familiar with the actual wrestling career, but I watched you at the London Games this year and at the Beach Street School, so I really like what you're doing.
Thanks. And Tex, last but not least, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
You bet. First of all, just a very quick thank you to Liberty Mutual Insurance for their support and sponsorship of Responsible Sports. And, of course, Coach Jones, we just can't tell you how grateful we are for having you here with us for your time. My interests or involvement in wrestling is I wrestled here at the University of Minnesota under Jay Robinson in the early 90s. And then I've been a wrestling coach ever since. So I coach youth. I also coach high school. And then I actually have been involved in coaching the 3 different styles, folk style, freestyle, and Greco, for the schools here in Minnesota, Minnehaha Academy, Orono, and Centennial. And my other personal part is I have a son who's 13 years old, a schoolboy, who has been wrestling since he was about 5 or 6, and he's also been wrestling in all 3 styles.
Great. And Zeke, if you wouldn't mind just touching a little bit about yourself for those of our responsible sports fans that may not be as familiar with wrestling and yourself.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
I didn't know,
Yes.
I'm catching a little bit of break. Everybody can hear me? Who was the last guy? What was your last name, a man from Minnesota there?
My last name is Ostvig, O-S-T-V-I-G.
Just want to make sure. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I'm just getting some freeze up there. My name's Zeke Jones. I'm the National Freestyle Coach. I've been a part of the program now for 4 years. I came on after Beijing in '08 and started, we did a basic total reset to the program. And so, obviously we did 4 years heading into London. Obviously we're getting focused on the next 4 years and the new challenges it presents. I'm excited to be here. It's great to chat with you guys, to get to know you guys, to learn a little bit about, what America's going through in its wrestling program and what our goals are and how we can help you achieve them. So I'm excited to be here and look forward to chatting with you guys.
Great. So I know, Chuck, you were really excited to ask your question, so I'll go ahead and let you get started.
Thanks. So, yeah, like I was saying, I coach a kids program, Zeke, and I coached in high school, and I wrestled in college and high school as well, and I'm also the skew of the panel. I'm from Illinois too, where there was a really strong wrestling program, and in Maryland things aren't quite as, to me, as serious as they were in Illinois. And what I'm wondering is, what's the best age for kids to start wrestling? And when's too young, and when's it too late? And what's an appropriate number of matches for kids to wrestle every year?
Sure, Chuck. I think that's a great question. I've got mixed thoughts on it. I look at the American wrestling system. We often start our kids off very early, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And certainly we perform well at the Olympic Games for those that, actually aspire and reach that level. I study a lot of countries' wrestling systems around the world. And, we actually start early as compared to most countries. Most countries wait to start their kids in wrestling at, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. Russia generally waits later. I think for just a variety of different reasons. Which system's better? I don't know. I think you can take different pieces from it and find the optimal system. We normally try to encourage our kids to wait a little bit later, but I even got a 6-year-old myself, and my instinct is to put him out there right now, get him involved, get him wrestling. But I think it depends on the maturity of the kid, the understanding of the parent. I would say starting them out in their first years of wrestling, I would start them out with a month, 2, 3 months of wrestling, minimal amount of competition, if they're very young. If they're older, you got to accelerate that career. If they're 10, 11, 12 years old starting, I might start them in 6 months of wrestling and give him, 30 to 50, 60 matches, just depending on where he starts at his age. But I think the key is the parent. It's where the parent starts them, where the parent, how he introduces them to the sport. I always think it's great, particularly when they're young, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, to make it a race or make it a game, make it fun. As they get older, of course, we can introduce it to be more serious and to make it more of a passion and a goal-driven sport. But, make it an environment where they love it and they want more of it every day. But I think you're going to find a variety of different thoughts on it, Chuck. Hey, just last thing, you were talking about Ukraine. That was a long time ago, and I can't remember you, but I know I don't think I won that tournament, so you probably won't remember me a whole lot either.
Jeff, do you have a question for Zeke?
Yes. As you know, the rules for the international styles constantly change every Olympic cycle, and so I was wondering what your thoughts are on what the optimal set of rules would be to make it the most exciting for fans, as well as make it easy enough for wrestlers and coaches to understand the rules.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, first off, I'm going to be a pain in the butt and tell you that freestyle hasn't changed its rules since 2004. They haven't implemented major rule change in freestyle. Of course,
Right.
interpretations have changed. How you get locked in the clinch, what's out of bounds, what's a push out, things like that, small little nuances. But they do make big impacts. But I can tell you this, we're getting ready to make monstrous rule changes within freestyle. And ultimately because it's what you guys know, that the IOC has recommended dropping wrestling from the game. So this is actually a window of opportunity that we look at to say, what are the most optimal rules we can have? And you guys will get the inside right here. Here's what I think freestyle is going to go to. And it could change a little bit. A 1-point push out, a 2-point takedown, a 5-point throw. And let me do the 2-pointer again. 2-point takedown, tilt, or turn. So the goal is to simplify wrestling, to make it easy for the fan to walk in for the first time and say, Okay, there's only 3 ways to score. 1 for a push out, 2 for a takedown turn or tilt, 5 points for a throw, and that's it. I think it's going to go back to cumulative score, not period reset. So it'll be, I think they're talking about 2 3-minute periods, cumulative score. So at the end of 6 minutes, that's the score. I think they're definitely going to get rid of the clinch. I think they're going to go back to some type of overtime. I think the overtime, Dan Gable and I were talking about it today. The two overtimes we're going to recommend is either A, Dan's is pretty interesting, and I actually like it. It's make the circle smaller. So we would have a regular circle, normal wrestling circle. But if the score's tied, 1-1, 2-2, 8-8, we would move that circle into 12 to 14 feet. And then scoring would be the same. We wouldn't change it. So you would just make that circle smaller, and I think we'd all agree that it's probably going to turn into a push-out, but it might not. So he wants to make the circle smaller in overtime. The other overtime that we're recommending is offense-defense. So at the end of a tied score, 5-5, 6-6, 7-7, we would flip the coin. Coin would land red. Red would get a choice of offense or defense. He would have 30 seconds to score. If he doesn't score, the defensive wrestler would win. They're talking about, I'd say those are the major rule changes. And I can tell you right now, within America, that's pretty, everybody's pretty, and I say everybody, the people that are actually participating in the choice of rules is looking at those rules. Oh, one more is passivity. Will we introduce stalling back into wrestling? And we haven't reached a consensus on that yet. But we're only one country. But I can tell you, here's who's going to drive the rule changes. USA and Russia. We're making the investment to save the sport. We're going to be ultimately the countries that will have that input. I've talked to the Russian coach some about 2 weeks ago. He has some of his opinions, but I think we're all pretty close on these things right now. So you guys are really the first to hear it.
All right, thanks.
Look at that, insider insight.
Yeah.
Josh, do you have a question for Zeke?
I do. My question is, thanks for everything you do, but my wife's cousin is Coleman Scott, and you coached him at the Olympics in August. My question is, do you believe that losing Olympic wrestling will affect wrestling at the youth and collegiate level?
Well, first off, Josh, 2 things. One, I know you got a 4-year-old, I got a 6-year-old. We got to get those 2 together sometime. 2,
Sounds
actually,
good.
I coached Coleman Scott when he was in 7th grade, when he was in Waynesburg, and I was coaching at West Virginia. So it was fun to see Coleman Scott be a junior high kid come down and train with us in Morgantown with my son David, Kyle Turnbull, and our whole little group there. But it was fun to see that come full circle in London, obviously as an Olympic medalist. But I think absolutely not. That I think although we have that, the advantage for the youth in the Olympic level is that Olympic champion Jordan and Coleman and Jake, they aspire the youth. That's important. We know that. We get excited when we watch these guys win gold medals. But I would say that, our youth program's pretty well entrenched. And I'll tell you right now, like for Iran, they have statues all over the country of Iran that wrestling is not just a sport. It's a part of their lifestyle. And I think that's the same thing in America. It's a part of our lifestyle. I don't see wrestling ever going away amongst our youth. That it's people like you and people like me that care about our kids. We know that wrestling isn't just about being an Olympic champion. It's about what it teaches our kids. So I think that's going to prevail.
Thanks for that. And we do here at Responsible Sports want to thank Coleman Scott, not only for his competition, but also for contributing to videos and different other things with Responsible Sports as well. We have Matt joining us as well. He's having some technical issues, but he wants to ask, what are the key elements to creating a top junior wrestling program?
Boy, I appreciate you guys all thinking I'm the expert, but I'm not. I can't tell you that I know what is successful in building a junior program. But I'd say these things first off is that, it's what we do at the Olympic level. sell them a dream of being the best they can be. Get them to fall in love with the sport of wrestling. Teach them and help them learn what they need to learn to be successful. But I'd say off the mat things too are, building a successful elementary program that feeds into the junior highs. Ensure that your community's engaged in your sport. Do things off the wrestling mat. Engage the folks that care about their children. Have parent gatherings. Reward the kids not just for their efforts on the mat but off the mat. I got to tell you, everybody's experience is different. My experience in junior high was I wrestled all through elementary school. When I got to junior high, I was finding other things, namely girls and other things, and sports, basketball or baseball and football. But I had a core of people around me that said, you really need to understand that, you may have a future in the sport of wrestling, but even if you don't, the characteristics that you learn in wrestling are critical. So we want you to continue the sport. So I think it's building a community around your team. Make it more than just your team. Get people excited. I mean, again, and I don't think it's any different, junior high or the Olympic team. After we got back from the Olympics, we thanked America. We couldn't thank every 1 million Americans that helped us. Of course, we could write an internet message and say thank you, but we went out to the sponsors and we went into their homes and said, I took Jordan and Jake with me everywhere, and Coleman too, and the whole Olympic team. We took them to different locations and said, thank you for your help. America, thank you for your help. And I think it's the same thing, and I think you just probably do it within your community. So, maybe I got to ask you the same question. I don't know that I'm the expert on junior high wrestling. Maybe you guys could share some things with me that I might learn. But I think those are the things that I would do.
All right, thanks. Mickey, do you have a question?
I do, Matt. Hi, Zeke. How is the fight going with the Olympic Games, and what can we do to help push that along?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would first off say we've got great momentum. Right now, and I don't know if you track the internet like I do when it comes to this issue. I pay attention every day what the entire world is saying about wrestling. And the good thing we've got is 99.99% of all the internet information that's going out, the world is saying, how can you drop wrestling? This is the greatest sport in the world. Wrestling is the Olympics, and the Olympics is wrestling. So right now we've got tremendous momentum. I think the way you can help, and I think Andy will come on at the end and share the information, is get on keepwrestlingtheolympics.com. There are several websites, there are several organizations that you can go and have your voice heard. And make no mistake, it is critical that you guys do it. And not just you, because I know you guys will. You love the sport, you love our program, you love your kids, but get your community to do it. We need your community out saying this sport is good for America, for our families, for our towns, and for the people in it. So we need that help. And I'm telling you, this is the 11th hour. Make no mistake. You should treat it like wrestling is going to get dropped. And if you had one more day with our sport, what would you do? Treat it like that every day.
Thanks. Paul, do you have a question for Zeke Jones? Oh, can't hear you there. Check your microphone, Paul. While Paul gets that situated, we'll go on to Will. Will, do you have a question for Zeke?
Yeah, I do. Zeke, I was wondering what makes the difference between a good wrestler and a great wrestler? Because we always hear about the great wrestlers, but not so much about the good wrestlers. And what pushes the good wrestlers to become great wrestlers?
Well, that's a great question, and earlier you were breaking up a little bit. But you were talking about placing in the state tournament this year. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, man, congratulations. That's a huge, huge feat, and I got to take my hat off to you. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
What year are you?
I'm a junior. I'll be a senior next year.
And that's what I thought you said. So I was second in the state my junior year. I get it. It motivates you. Nothing like placing in the state tournament to motivate you to be a state champion. So let me wish you good luck. Next year.
Thanks.
I'd say, your question of, good to great it's a fine line. Often when we're doing good, all the things that come with being good, you're getting some positive feedback. People are telling you, hey, you're doing a good job, but you look within yourself and you realize, okay, I'm good, things are going well, but how do I get to great? I'd say first off, you've got some control over that, but not all of it. That from good to great, it might be a little question of what God's given you. But if God's given you the gift to be the best in the state, the best in the country, the best in the world, how do you get there? I would say it's the same path that it takes to become a state champion. That when you become a state champion, and then you want to be a national champion, and you want to be a world champion, Olympic champion, you know what I tell our guys? It's the same path. If you want to be the best, how you become a state champion is how you become a national champion, a world Olympic champion. Working hard, studying your sport, being a student of the sport, mental toughness, learning what the best in the country and the world are doing, immersing yourself in the environment, making the sacrifice, but making it more than the good guy. Because I'll tell you right now, I've watched a lot of guys being on the United States wrestling team. They're doing a lot of things right. But if you want to be the best weightlifter, weightlift. If you want to be the best runner, be a runner. If you want to be the best wrestler, what do you got to do, Will?
Wrestle.
You've got to wrestle all the time. You've got to go into that room and do more than you've ever done before every day. And I don't mean you got to do 1,000,000 repetitions, but you've got to study the nuances technically and tactically of your style, what it takes to become the best. And I think that's the difference between good and great. And you'll probably hear in my voice, if I'm just talking to you, I'd talk to you like this. But I'm talking to you like this. That it's the passion, it's the drive, it's watching Jake, watching Jordan, watching Coleman, and all our best. When they go in that room, they don't just go in. They go in with a heartfelt purpose on getting better today. And it doesn't mean every day they're the greatest human being of all time in the wrestling room. Every day we can go in there tired, we can go in happy, we can go in excited, we can go in fatigued and mentally exhausted, but can you get the most out of your day? So I would say those are, maybe I haven't said it, but the passion in my voice in trying to tell you what the difference between good and great, you need to decide what that is based on how you hear me talk.
Thanks. Paul, we see that you're back. Can you go ahead and see if we can test the mic? All right. Can you get a question for Zeke?
Oh, we're good. Yeah. I didn't get to tell you earlier, I'm from Bakersfield, California. I coach here. And as you know, Jake's from here. And he's done a lot of stuff with us so far. What's your thoughts on the MMA, and considering that most of our top fighters in the MMA were wrestlers, and how come they aren't, or the UFC is not getting involved in supporting the cut of the Olympics?
Yeah, first off on Jake and Bakersfield, obviously, we love Bakersfield. We got an Olympic champion from Bakersfield, and he's the best. How it interacts to MMA, I would say first off that, MMA, despite what people think, and maybe I'm wrong, but we were 2 points away from winning the Olympic Games and 5 points away from winning the Worlds. Now, could we argue that if Cain Velasquez or Daniel Cormier kept wrestling, could we have won? Perhaps. But I don't think it's holding us back from winning the World Championships. We definitely can. Now, what's their role in helping wrestling? I got to tell you, I've been overseas for 26 days, and I just got back a few days ago. I think there was a meeting between Dana White, Jim Shear, and Tommy Rowlands, and they were outlining a plan on MMA helping wrestling. I think there's something in the works. I don't think you and I have heard it yet. So I'm not sure that MMA hasn't done it. Of course, they haven't done anything yet.
Right.
But are they positioned? I think so. But, that makes me want to, call somebody as soon as I get off the phone and find out what's going on. Because I heard they are going to do something, but what are they doing? I don't know.
I mean, he gets a lot of our wrestlers. They do. I shouldn't say he does. So.
Yeah, but I got to tell you this. You know what? You know, Ben Askren, do you think he would ever beat Jordan Burroughs? I mean, I don't think so. So,
I don't want to answer that.
Well, you can answer it. I mean, Ben's a friend of mine. Ben and I talk. Can he beat him? Maybe. But right now we got the Olympic champion. That's a pretty darn good argument. But maybe the question you might be posing is there another guy in MMA who perhaps would have won a medal for us, but it's not wrestling? I guess you and I will never know that. But I don't get that luxury of that excuse. I can't make it. As the coach, we have to win, Paul. We have to get the job done. We have to be the best team in the world. We won't settle for anything less. So we're going to find a way to win regardless of MMA. And I think we can all agree we're pretty darn close. So we can do it with our fighters or our wrestlers going to MMA. We can still do it. I believe we can. People said we can't. As the coach, I say we can. I guess we'll find out.
Excellent. Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, buddy.
Tex, you're up next. You have a question for Zeke?
Yeah, I do, Coach Jones. First of all, again, your enthusiasm and your passion, just in the last 22 minutes, you've already made me a better coach, so thank you. I'm going to go with maybe a combo question with this, is that my son's been wrestling since he was 6. He's a 13 and a schoolboy. He actually has aspirations and hopes that he'll be in the Olympics in 2020. And so hopefully everything will be there and you'll be there. But one of the things is that when I'm coaching him as a father, as well as another coach, John Berglund from Centennial, we're always trying to find mental fortitude. Now, my question would be to you is that you, with your elite level and your world champions in Bulgaria and your finalists in Olympics in '92 and all of your success, how did you develop your mental fortitude at that elite level so that we can try and help our young people understand the same pattern?
Yeah, that's a good question. And what's your boy's name?
His name is Marcus.
Marcus. All right. Well, I'll be looking for Marcus in 2020 when I'm coaching him. That'll be a lot of fun.
Great.
Well, that's a tough question. In that, I don't think there's, as you and I know, there's no magic wand or secret pill that we can take or kids can take and all of a sudden they're mentally tough. I got to tell you, when I was in 8th grade, my stomach would get knotted up. And I got so nervous and thought, man, this is hard. So I think it was learned. Like I believe anything in life can be learned. That through experiences, obviously through trial and error, through good coaching, through putting them in the situation. You've got to put them in the situation. You've got to train them for the situation, put them in the situation. After it's over, put them in the stressful environment. After it's over, evaluate the stressful environment with them, and then give them some recovery, let them mentally take a break, and then repeat that process over and over and over again. Now, with a younger person, I don't know if I would do it very often, as they're learning how to cope and digest mental toughness, but there is no better way to do it than put them in the environment. But how you put them in and take them out and put them in and take them out is the art of coaching. And, for Marcus, maybe your son versus Jake Varner, I tell you, I can't put Jake under stress as often as I can put Jordan under stress. So I'm going to do it probably 6 times with Jordan and 4 times with Jake. Each personality is different. But we're going to repeat the process. We're going to say, all right, we're getting ready to start the training cycle. We put them under stress in training. We tell them, okay, we're getting ready to test you. Then you get tested in that tough environment. Then when the tough environment's over, we look back on it and say, okay, what did we learn from this stressful test? Then we give them a break. Then we put them back in that environment again. Well, obviously, during the wrestling season, we do it more often. In the summer, we don't do it as often, or depending on how you cycle your kids up and down through the wrestling year. But make no mistake, you got to put them under the gun in the right time, in the right way, for the right amount, with the proper amount of recovery. And that's the way I'd say. Now, if you want to do like specific examples, what we do is we do tournament simulations almost every Friday during a World and Olympic team training camp. So every time I bring the American wrestling team together, on Friday, 5 matches. They're going to be under stress. 5 matches on Friday. Remember, it's, I'm bringing Jake Varner and J.D. Bergman and Win Mahalik, who are trying to beat each other to make the World Olympic team. I'm bringing them together in practice. So in practice, they're already thinking, all right, well, I'm a little weary about this guy because, he's certainly the enemy when I'm trying to make the team, but I need that guy to help me win the world. So we put him under the gun in practice almost every Friday in matches in a match day. I put him on the incline over in Colorado Springs, which is a straight up a mountain, which is brutally hard. And we test them on Saturday mornings, and we clock them and compare their times throughout the different times of the year. So those are some of the, specific ways we test them. But I don't, again, I'd be careful how often we test them. We bring our team together about 8 times a year, and we put them under the gun for about 100 days. So the 260 other days, I'm not putting them under the gun as a national team, but I know they are at home putting themselves under the gun. So that's maybe a long-winded answer, but I hope that helps.
No, that is incredibly helpful, and I'm just so glad I get to watch it over again and take all these notes. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, anytime.
And thanks for asking that question, Tex. We had one of our younger fans, Dalen, who's also currently a wrestler. He had the exact same question, so thanks for asking that. Over on the USA Wrestling Facebook page, they left a note for people to ask questions, and we have a question here from Ramona. She asks, what advice do you have for parents of a child whose dreams of one day competing in the NCAA championships? And how do you as a parent help them with that? And did your parents have any influence on your career?
Yeah, I think first off, and a little bit of what I'd said earlier without belaboring it is, it's inspiring your child by putting them in the optimal environment. And whether you're a parent or a coach, and I could happen to be both, right? I had a son that wrestled in high school, and when you put them in the optimal environment, which is obviously give them love and all the resources to be successful, I really think that parents, for me, parent needs to be parent. I think there are exceptional cases when parent can be coach, and you got to be really good at that. I don't think I'd be very good at that. But I do know, like Jim Humphrey, who is an excellent father, who is an excellent coach with his own son, who was on the 11, and could do it. I think it's just giving him, making sure you foster that love and passion for the sport, ensuring that you can give them all that you can, and where you can't give them, that's okay too. Remember, it's not just your responsibility as the parent, it's the child's responsibility to get hooked on the sport and to love it and do his and her part. That my parents, and again, it's my experience, not anybody else's, but my mom and dad didn't even know how to score a wrestling match. My dad was more excited about when the finals were over, where were we going to have the party that night. And he made sure that all the parents and all the kids were in a great, safe environment to have a lot of fun. So my parents were more about what was going to happen after the tournament than during the tournament. They supported me. My mom picked me up every day after school, ensured that I had a ride home, that I wasn't struggling to find out how I was going to get back home after practice. And I think each parent can do it their own way. Dad might be coach, dad might be dad, mom might be the one that cooks the apple cobbler on Sundays after a big tournament on Saturday as a treat and a reward for your hard work all week. So I think it's each parent to find that way they can give their child the optimal environment. But, it's make sure that kid loves it and hold them accountable to the work. I think one thing we did with our son David was, David, if you're going to do it, you have to do it right or you're not allowed to do it. You have to ensure that when you make a commitment to your sport, if you're going to start wrestling, if you're going to start lacrosse, start baseball, you have to do it right or you're not allowed to do it. And if you're going to do it, you have to do it right. That's a given. And we'll do everything we can do to help you do it right. So whatever you need, what do you need? Ride to practice? Do you need, ensure that you need a certain uniform or whatever it is, the right kind of food when you come home? It was those kinds of things. I think that's what a parent can do.
Fantastic. Chuck, do you have another question for Zeke?
I certainly do. Given that you're such a awesome technician, I was just wondering, what do you think's a good handful of techniques that we should be teaching our kids these days for wrestling? You know, 5, 6 techniques. And kind of an aside question, is mat wrestling a lost art?
All right, so your first question is, I got the perfect answer for you, is the top 7 wrestlers in the world top 5 wrestlers in the world in 7 weight categories. So use the Olympic Games. It was the Olympic Games and the 11 World Championships, 11 and 12. If you look at the top, 7 times 5, it was the 35 top wrestlers in the world. Do you know what the top 4 scoring actions in the world were on your feet? And we can make this a trivia question. Whoever gets this right, I don't know how we do this. If you can manage that.
We'll send them
What were the top 4 scoring actions in the world on your feet in the 11 World Championships in 12, and you have to get them in order? What's number 1, what's number 2, number 3, and number 4? Then I'll answer your mat question after.
Anybody want to take a shot?
Number 1's probably single leg.
Number 2 is double leg.
Who's got 3 and 4?
High crotch.
Inside trip.
So one guy has to do all 4. One guy has to do all 4. You guys are cheating. One guy's got to do all 4 in order. We'll give 2 tries. So
Jeff, want to give it a try?
Josh answered the question, right? Did Josh ask the question?
Chuck asked, but I think Jeff might have a shot at answering it.
All right.
I'll go with those 4 in the same order.
Okay. And it's partly a trick question, but it's not. So your answer is incorrect. Next. But pretty damn good job, Jeff, by the way.
Anybody else have a shot at taking a guess? Chuck, you asked the question. You think you know the moves?
Come on.
I'll take a risk.
Go for it.
Okay, you can't win if you don't play.
That's right. I'm taking a risk. I'm going to go with a double leg blast. I'm going to go with an elbow pass. I'm going to go with an arm drag and a low single.
Okay, let me clarify my question because I didn't ask that well. What are the top 4 attacks in the world? So I would call an arm drag a setup. I would call the double leg the attack, and I would call a flare a finish. So what are the top 4 attacks in the world? So arm drag is a setup. What would be the actual attack?
Tex, want to give it a shot?
I'll give it a shot. Double leg. Single leg. Low level ankle shot. And arm throw.
You guys are all over it. I'm telling you, you're all over it. Does anybody want to take one more shot at it?
I will.
Paul, go for it.
Because you guys are so close.
A double, an outside single, a high crotch, and a pass by.
What's pass by? That's the setup. What do you do when you pass him by? What's the tap?
Duck under. Duck under.
Duck under. Nope. All right, here's what it is, boys. You guys were close. Number 1, single leg, represents 42% of all scoring actions. Now, when I say single leg, that's head inside, not head outside. So number 1 is head inside single. Number 2 is double leg. And Jeff, I think you were the closest. Number 2 is double leg. Number 3 is high crotch, head outside single, high crotch. And number 4 is, you guys always get the top 3 right. Single leg, double leg, high crotch. Single leg, double leg, high crotch. But number 3, number 4, what's number 4?
Duck under.
Nope.
Lateral drop.
Nope.
Yep. Ankle pick.
Come on, boys. Nope.
Good luck.
Nope.
Snap down.
Well, snap down's the setup. What do you have to do?
Go behind.
Go behind, number 4. So when I say go behind, I say either I snap you and I go behind you, or B, you shoot and I go behind you. It's still an attack. A go behind's an attack. So I guess technically you could say on a single leg you got to go behind, on a double leg you got to go behind. But I basically call it counter, not necessarily counter offense, but the go behind is the number 4 attack in the world. But I'll tell you this, if you look at offense and defense, obviously offense represents 80% of all scoring, counter offense represents 20% of all scoring. If you're going to coach your team, 40% of the time you've got to work on your single leg. Then I would say after that, work on your counter offense, then work on your double leg and your high crotch. If you go in that order in practice, that's what order we go in practice. We go single leg number 1, counter offense number 2, and then our high crotch and our double leg in that order. You're going in statistical order of what wins at the highest level in the world. And you know and I know those are the same things that work at the kids level too. Maybe, the order's different. Maybe double legs winning more at 5 years old. But the winning wrestling never goes away. The order might change. I don't know, maybe headlock wins. It sneaks up in there, but eventually goes away.
Thanks. Jeff, you have a question for Zeke?
Yeah. You wrestled for Bobby Douglas at Arizona State, and I'm sure you learned a lot from him. What's one of the biggest things you can pass on to other wrestlers and coaches?
Yeah, I was very blessed. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, right next to the University of Michigan campus. My first little kids coach when I was 5 to 10 years old ended up being the head coach at the University of Illinois, Mark Johnson. Then I had 2 great junior high and high school coaches, James Bryant and Ernie Gillum. Ernie Gillum was on a national championship team at Iowa State. He lost in the finals of the NCAAs to Rick Sanders. That was my high school coach, along with Tommy Davids. And then when I went to college, I had Bobby Douglas. I was blessed. All my coaches wrestled in college and above. I was just a little kid. I didn't even know. I just went to practice. I did what they told me. So God blessed me to have great coaching. Bobby was a master planning wrestling coach, on the mat and off. He understood how to get you ready. Technically and tactically, his coaching technique was brilliant. He understood what Bobby, I'd like to think, passed along to me, and I think you have to ask my wrestlers that question, whether this is accurate or not. But what Bobby would know is he would know those 4 scoring actions. But what Bobby was great at was he knew how to get you to do them against the best in the world. Obviously who's Bobby Douglas's greatest wrestler? Cale Sanderson. Perhaps the greatest American wrestler of all time. That was Bobby's final piece of clay. It was his final masterpiece. He learned through guys like me and everybody else how to make his coaching better. And the thing he knew how to do is set up the drill. So if you're saying, okay, I want to make sure my guys can all arm drag to a double leg, he was better than anybody to help you learn the arm drag to the double. Not only learn it, but learn it quickly. Like, you would learn it today, and next week you're beating the kid from Iowa in the meet on Saturday in it. He was that good. He could set up the drill. And that's the challenge for all you coaches and for myself every day is how do you set up the drill? If you know all the numbers to how to win the worlds, like you know what techniques win, how to win on the edge of the mat, but the other thing is how do you get your kids to learn it? And how do you get Jake Barnes? Jake Barnes is the best wrestler in the world on the edge of the mat. His edge of the mat tactics, and you could put Jordan in the same category. You could fight over who was better at it. But Jake was the best in the world at the edge of the mat. Nobody got him on the edge because his tactics were so good. And I'd like to think that, between our national staff, Cale, and the Penn State group, we got Jake to learn all those things. And Jake obviously took ownership to learn it. But I'd say Bobby was great at setting up the drill.
Thanks for sharing that. And we have some, if you want to hear some more information on Bobby Douglas and some of his personal advice, visit Responsible Sports. We got some of his videos as well. So, Josh, you have a question for Zeke?
I do. My son, I said again, he's 4 and he wrestles on a club in Indiana from Perry Meridian High School. And I'm just asking you in regards from another coach, if you remember coming to that school in 2004, 2005 time frame.
I sure
since
do.
then, I just wanted to let you know that they've won the last 3 state titles, and they're one of the top-ranked public schools in the nation.
Yeah, they've been doing a great job in that program for a long time.
And do you have any advice for those guys and coaches there to keep that program keep going in the right direction?
Keep doing what they're doing. It's working. It's winning. I love going down doing their clinic over there in Indiana. Then obviously, the coaches and the program have done a super job. I think they need to continue what they're doing, and like anything, keep growing. If we're not growing, we're dying. And keep reinventing ourselves, keep learning, ways that we can get better, and keep doing what they're doing.
Great. We have a question again from Matt, who's he writes, his son's junior team actually just competed in their first state championship, and they were wondering how they can either get up to speed or how they can compete with other camps and other clubs that have been wrestling for years and years and years.
Well, it's and again, maybe I sound like a broken record. It's do the things that we talked about earlier. In starting a new club, it's obviously create some energy around the program. How do you create energy around the program? You create it by getting kids involved, getting into the elementary schools and junior highs, and saying, hey, come be a part of what we're doing. Obviously, leadership's critical. Make sure you have a good leadership parent group. Make sure you got a good coach. And a good coach doesn't mean he has to be the greatest wrestler of all time. A coach that cares about kids, a coach that is focused on the small things. And if he's not a real technical guy, get somebody in that can help with the technique in the room. If he's a technical guy, that helps. Obviously the leadership. Get support of the schools. Go into the principals. Make sure that you're talking to the principals and getting their support. Talk to PE teachers. Hey, who are the better athletes in your school? Do a little bit of recruiting in the schools and say, hey, come out for wrestling. Be a part of what we're doing. And then, soak up the knowledge around, the neighboring clubs. Of course, you're going to compete with the neighboring clubs. And I got to tell you, maybe here's a new point. The Russians, we want to beat them, right? Azerbaijan, we want to beat them. Iran, we want to beat them. But I tell you this, who we train with? We train with them. I have our team overseas 60 to 80 days out of the year training with the Belarusians, with the Azerbaijanis, with the Bulgarians, with the Ukrainians. We train jointly because what we realize is to get better, we've got to train with the enemy, and we do. So I don't tend to keep our guys separate. I bring them together with other countries, and I don't know if that necessarily works at the kids level, but I tell you, if I was a starting club, I'd take my 20 kids and go over to the good club and start wrestling with them. Find out what they're doing good. Let my kids rub elbows with the good kids. Let them learn from those coaches that are coaching successful kids. And I would say that would be some of the things I would do. My thoughts.
Thanks. Mickey, do you have another question for Zeke? We have time for a few more questions.
I do, Matt. Thank you. First, Zeke, I want to say that I met you when we were in junior high, and the passion you have now, you had back then too. I was at a camp in Ann Arbor, and you were just hanging out there as a local person, local wrestler, and I had the opportunity to talk to you then, and I can see why you are where you're at. And second, I have a son that he's getting ready to go into high school. What kind of core skills did you look for when you were recruiting, when you coached at West Virginia or at UPenn? What are the core skills you're looking for? Is it freestyle? Is it just how they place in the States, their schoolwork, just anything like that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Recruiting is, I think the best recruiting, and again, I'm doing it from the college perspective, coach perspective, is the best recruiting is done by word of mouth. So I may look in the state tournament in Michigan or Ohio and look at the brackets, and I'll see all the kids that won. Well, as you know and I know, there are 50 state tournaments. So how do I distinguish between a state champion in Michigan versus a state champion in Missouri? Generally, it's by word of mouth. I'll call the folks that I know in Missouri and say, hey, who are the better kids in Missouri? Who are the people that I trust? I'll call the people in Michigan, hey, who are the better kids that you like in Michigan? And they'll say, well, here are the state champs, but I'll say I like these 2 or 3 kids, and here's why. And then it's generally the things you're talking about. They come with some basic skills on their feet, on the mat, both top and bottom. What are they doing well on their feet? Are they doing the top 4 scoring actions in the world on their feet? Are they using a stand-up on bottom, a sit-out switch, and Granby roll? What are they doing on top? Do they ride legs? And then, that's just one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is, what kind of kid is he? That's probably the first question I always ask is, well, what kind of kid is he? And I'll tell you, the word gets around pretty quickly. You know, great kid, good family, cares about, you know, his teammates, has great grades. And then other, you know, kids will say, hey, I'll tell you, the kid's nothing but trouble. I've heard nothing but bad things about him. And I'll tell you, I check that kid right off my list and he's done. I'll go on to the next kid because there's so many kids out there. One of the big separators, too, is Fargo in the Junior Nationals. Again, you've got so many state champions at 125 pounds in the country, and Fargo is a great way to separate them, too. That, although we know it's freestyle, I don't care if it's freestyle or folk style. A single leg's a single leg. So if that kid's got a good single leg in folk style, he's got a good single leg in freestyle. So Fargo's a great determiner of where kids are, and a lot of college coaches go there. High school nationals, obviously, is another great tournament. There's one of those others. I'd say get out of state. You know, once you've shown your proficiency within state, then I would say start to go out of state and look at those kids, you know, competing out of state. Compare yourself against kids in other states to know really where you're at.
Will, it seems like you might be having some feedback issues. Just try turning your speakers down a little bit. It is your turn to ask you questions, so if you have another question for Zeke, go ahead.
Yeah, how do you keep your guys motivated? Like, let's say throughout a tournament or throughout their season, even how do you keep them having their eyes on the prize, so to speak? Even if they're struggling or if they're dealing with other issues.
Yeah, you know, it's, you know, again, just the ultimate motivation. It's kind of 90-10. You know, 10% we got to dream about being a state champ, being a national champ, being a World Olympic champ. But in order to beat all those things, you got to be focused on the process. So 90% of the time I'm thinking about how do I beat the Iranian? How do I beat the kid from Michigan? How do I, you know, what are the techniques I got to use? I got to get better at my single leg. I realize that I'm not a good finisher. I got to get better at finishing my double leg. You know, my riding, I got to work on my breakdown, my tight waist breakdown, or my spiral ride. You know, so it's 90% staying focused on the process, 10% motivates us, you know, the ultimate goal, which, you know, focuses on the process. You know, that's the art of a coach. And, you know, we could probably spend a week right here on the internet talking about how do we motivate our kids. And every guy is different. How I motivate Jake is different than I motivate Jordan and I motivate Coleman. And each guy's got different buttons. And how do we help each of them get to the plate? You know, some need to be nudged in the back, some need to be patted on the back, some, you know, need to be shoved forward, some need to be hugged, some need to be, you know, scolded a little bit, and obviously in a productive way. So how do you do that? That's the challenge. You know, that's the art of coaching. And, you know, you can ask Will, who's on here, young guy trying to win a state title, you know, he might be a guy that says, you know, I don't like being yelled at. And some, you know, kids might like to be, hey, Johnny, you got to go harder. You're not pushing yourself hard enough. And the other, you know, I might go to Will on here and say, Will, man, you're doing great. You get it. You are on track. You're focused. And Will just might go, you know, he might puff right up. So I think it's, you know, reading your kid, you know, taking his temperature, knowing where he's at. If he's a little too high, nudging him down. If he's a little too relaxed, pushing him up. You know, you got to take his temperature and know where he's at and what his buttons are. But ultimately, you know, that's the challenge of being a great coach is, you know, how do you get your kid to perform the best? And, man, if I mastered it, I'd write a book, but I haven't published anything yet.
Not yet. Tex, do you have a question for Zeke?
I sure do. And one clarification, when I listed double leg takedown as my first choice in the top four, I was always thinking just of Jordan Burroughs, watching him in college and the Olympics, how well his double leg was. So I just want to make sure that was out there.
Yeah, you know, Jordan, the number 2 takedown in the world was double leg, and that Jordan helped you keep those numbers up.
My question is this. I think we all agree that over-coaching during a match can really take away the focus of our wrestlers. With your experience in being coached and being as well as being a coach, what's another big mistake that I see coaches that coaches do all the time that we need to either recoach or retrain and stay away from?
Boy, that's a good question. I'm very cognizant of what I see all the tournament day, from sitting in the corner, how you're instructing each kid, And each kid's even a little bit different. You might say a little more to Bill than you say to Mike. But it's also even in the back room, in between rounds, in between the quarters to the semis, between the semis to the finals. Each kid's a little different. You know, you might be able to say, hey, you got the kid from Minnesota next week, or later today in the next round, and he's got a good double leg. And you might be, that's all you say to him. But I might go to another kid on my team. You know, I might go, Jake, I didn't say very much about the guy he was going to wrestle the next round. We did all our scouting a week out, a month out, 3 days out at the most. But with Coleman, you know, I could do a little bit more with him. Hey, Coleman, remember, this kid's right leg lead. His main move is a duck under. Don't lay your left hand up on his shoulder because that's when he's going to shrug. So each guy would be a little bit different. I would do it a little bit in the corner, too, is not just technical. It would be motivating. You know, like we would win. Coleman win the first period, and then we'd come back in the second period, and I'd say, Coleman, time to finish this guy off. We would win. Man, his whole body would just like, yeah, I'm going to finish this guy off. And you could just see his body language. So, again, it's a little bit more what the triggers are for each one of your guys, whether he needs a little bit of motivation in the corner, does he need a little more instruction, match planning. We're very, very big on match planning, meaning the Iranians got to shrug, got to stay away from that. The Bulgarians got a double leg, you got to stay out of that. Each match we're getting ready, we would have an individual match plan to beat that individual guy. I'm big on individual match plans, but not every guy is. So I might not do it with Jake, but I would do it more with Coleman.
Okay, so we got time for one more question. I know, Paul, you didn't get to ask your second question yet. So do you have a question for Zeke? And I think we actually just lost Paul. So what we'll do is we'll ask Chuck, if you have one more question, we'll go ahead and finish you off with the last question for Zeke.
I certainly do. Zeke, can you give a brief overview? Because you were talking about running your guys up the hill and timing them intensely. Can you give us a brief overview of what's the Olympic team's running and lifting program, and what kind of running and lifting do you do close to competition time?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like you guys do. We do most of our running lifting, and I say most of it. We lift them about 11 times a month and run them about 14 times a month in the preseason. Then I knock it back down to about 8 and 6. And again, individually, I'm going to lift Jordan and Jake more, and I'm going to run Cole. I'm going to lift Jake and Jordan more, but I'm going to run Coleman more for his weight. Not just his conditioning, but his weight. But Jake and Jordan need to keep their weight up. They mentally need to be strong, so we're going to lift them. But we won't lift them inside of usually a week. Tervel, sometimes I'd lift Tervel 5-6 days out, nothing, 120 kilos, heavyweight. We'd lift him up until about 5 days before. But we mostly didn't lift anybody inside a week of a major world competition. Of course, if we're wrestling a dual meet, we might train through a dual meet on the weekend. But, we'll lift them and run them, two times a week. And then Jake and Jordan might lift 3 times in a week. Tervel will probably lift 3 times in a week. Coleman will probably lift twice in a week, but we'll run him 3 times. Sam Hayeswinkle, Jared Frayer, we'd probably lift him twice and run him 3 times. But in the week of competition, we'd probably run him for weight control, not for conditioning. The lift would be just a maintenance lift. It wouldn't be a heavy lift. And, again, we're competing every 6 weeks. You might be wrestling every weekend with your kids. We're only competing every 4 to 6 weeks with the Olympic team. So I would cycle your kids differently than the Olympic team only because of that. But I would be lifting them and running them.
I'm going to sneak one more question in. We have a question from USA Wrestling Fan on Facebook, and Karen asked, what one trait that you acquired on the mat do you take and translate it best off of the mat?
Say that one more time.
Which personality trait, or work ethic trait that you acquired on the mat translated best off the mat?
I got to tell you, Karen, that's a good question. First off, one thing I can tell you is it's funny how guys wrestle on the mat is generally their personality off the mat, and vice versa. guys wrestle like they act. And I'm not saying it's always that way, but it's pretty close. I mean, it's like you always hear the adage, a guy gets a dog that looks like him, their personal pet. I mean, it's a little bit like that. But I would tell you the two main attributes that I like personally and for our team: one, mental toughness; two, student of the sport. If you're mentally tough and you're a student of the sport, it's hard to beat that guy.
Thanks. That's all the time we have for tonight. We wanted to thank everyone watching at home, our special guests, and give a special thanks to Zeke Jones.
Sure.
We also want to thank USA Wrestling. To learn more, visit themat.org or .com, and visit responsiblesports.com for more great insight on youth sports, parenting, coaching advice. And we do believe that I think USA Wrestling has a special message they may want to get on here and say as well.
Yeah, you can. All right, so Harris wants me to say I'm going to sign this hat. And who are we giving this to, Harris?
To everyone that participated.
Everybody participate. I'm going to sign a hat to you. Is that cool?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's great.
Very cool.
yeah.
I'll give it to my son Marcus.
All right, I'll sign it to Marcus. Is it with a C or a K?
It's with a C.
Got it.
Thanks, Zeke.
Thank you.
Sure, fellas.
Thanks again for tuning in. Everyone have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks.